All right, good morning. Morning. I came all the way from Kansas City, Missouri in the US, and Poland is one of my absolute favorite countries in the world. You've impressed me with all of the different developers I've worked with, onshore, offshore, doesn't matter. You're a very dedicated culture to producing the best quality software and really good collaboration. So give yourselves a hand for that. This is a topic I've been talking about for about 5 years now. Because you are also quality, I'd like you to promise me something during this talk. Please assume that you all know what you're doing, okay? And you're wonderful, especially since you've come here to DevConf. You're already in the top 5% of developers. Yes, congratulations. So with this assumption that you all know what you're doing, how do I find you if I am a lead, a hiring manager? How do I find you? This is the question that I get asked probably the most often in my entire career. In order to do this, I'm going to show an example of kind of a blurb from my LinkedIn site. This is what I put together along with some guidance from somebody who does a lot of hiring. These blurbs already, my eyes are glazing over. It's not as long as my resume. That's a whole other thing. But when people recommend you for something, they don't remember these blurbs word for word. Human beings are not computers, unfortunately. We make them and we let them handle the work. The reason these blurbs exist is for one reason, and that's so a human resource group can search for keywords to find you. That's one way to get found. Another way to get found, though, is your network and how people recommend you for things. So when I had asked my network, what words do they associate with me? It was never this blurb. It was, they use words such as innovation, because I've done a lot of from the ground up kind of greenfield work. I've done a lot of enterprise, so they associate me strongly with that. I have about 12 years in the Microsoft.NET ecosystem. I've done a lot of consumer-facing things. And of course, I am a speaker. So that's a lot shorter list, right, than what I just showed you. Do you know what others would say about you? What is your very short list that humans remember? Often there's just too much detail provided. So we're going to talk about how to strengthen your impression by simplifying and focusing on the message of who you are and how to climb within the ranks. I've done development for many years. Humans are always the algorithm that is the toughest nut to crack. So let's talk about that for just a little bit before you go and learn even more technical content. We don't want to stick out for the wrong reasons, like a sore thumb or a black sheep. We want to be enticing and not uncomfortable in order to be part of a team. But like it or not, you have a brand, even if you haven't paid attention to it. So learn how to craft it into a narrative that you actually want to represent. You need to embrace sticking out for the good reasons. Research confirms, though, that there is a real disconnect between your performance and your job outcome. So to get into that, we're going to dive into how humans perceive each other. You can drive your perception at your workplace, or you can attend to it externally in the industry. And we're going to explore both and how that works. Whew, this is a tough question. Why do other people get promoted before you? If you're the one who worked really hard to deliver a project and you were the one who did the most technical deep diving, why did somebody else get that promotion? What is that about? The truth is, if you're too busy keeping your head down and your nose to the grindstone, it's kind of hard to see you without an ally speaking up for you and reminding others how awesome you are. Why would you leave that to chance? Part of managing yourself and your trajectory means to make it easier for people and opportunities to find you. So if you get really shy or humble or bashful about what you've done, that might be a cultural thing. I know for me and my family, it absolutely was. We never spoke highly of the work that we did because that isn't the way I was raised. Unfortunately, that had prevented me from so many opportunities because when somebody asks me, what do you do? I just say, oh, I code. And that's not a good answer for us. We need to know a little bit more than that. You may unintentionally make the job of managing you harder as well. If your manager isn't over your shoulder all the time, how are they supposed to know what good work you're doing more than just a pull request? You see, you have to be your own advocate in this. That's why the idiot gets the responsibility, because they were self-promoting shamelessly, loudly, and often to the point where, I guess it must be true because we keep hearing about it. That sounds silly. It sounds like it shouldn't be this way. But regardless of the country that you are in, this is the case. You should also self-promote, only there's a much more refined way of doing it, and you don't have to be obnoxious. Remember, half of your job is doing the work, which you've already assumed you're great at, but the other half of your job is communicating to the people responsible around you that it is done. And it's more than just dragging something into a done column. If you do something and I don't hear about it, how do I know what's going on? How do I know how you think and how you process information? How do I know how challenging that was for you? It isn't you as an individual, but maybe the framework that we chose was probably not the best for our project. And if all you do is just implement it and get it done, and I don't even get any sort of feedback about that, maybe I'll continue to believe that that framework was correct. Stepping forward with your experience, even if you're a junior, is very important. Like, voluntarily give this information. Remote work has made this incredibly crucial because I can't sit with you and know what you're doing and what is difficult. So, if you take nothing else away from this whole talk, it's a slide right here. Do things and tell people. Oh, that's it. I guess I don't need to talk anymore. But in all seriousness, we miss out when we wrongly assume that other people will know about our great work without us having to tell them. So if you believe that pointing to your achievements is being overly self-promotional and that your good work should be enough on its own, it's ironically very selfish thinking. You are almost always on your mind, but I promise you, you're not on everybody else's mind all the time. So you have to tell them and remind them. Do you do self-assessment reports like, how good do you think you did? No? All right, think about that. How good did you do on this? It's very popular in the States to do self-assessments now. They want to know what your perception is of the job you're doing. Most everybody is busy with their own lives, so sometimes this is a good reminder for those who can give you more money and more responsibility what it is you accomplished. If you feel like you're not really getting anywhere at the place you work, there are other ways to become more visible and to create a better brand and reputation for yourself, and that is to externalize the things that you're very opinionated about, like the way that you feel people should build a mobile app or something new that you learned in Angular. This is something that you can share outside of your work, and it can be very rewarding. What I'm doing right now is externalizing the thoughts in my head and in a way to establish myself as a leader. If you haven't gotten an opportunity to show that you can do more at your company, that's okay. Do things on the side. Make it anyways. And then tell others about it who don't work with you. You are going to make lifelong friendships within the tech industry. I have several. And you aren't going to be at your job forever. You might get to be at a new job, or you might move somewhere else, and that necessitates a new job. The first thing you're going to need to do is ask others for a good word to put in for you. Because we all know that working hard and doing a good job is insufficient for moving up in the world. It's really hard fact that promotions in big companies and tech companies of any scale is about leadership and in many cases management. You'll get well paid if you work hard and do a good job. You just won't get promoted all that far. And this is very unfortunate that this seems to be the case. What is that about? Because you're not talking about it. You're not talking about what it is you brought to the table. So let's start practicing how to do this. One way to do is if you start writing a blog about something new to you, maybe that you stumbled on, maybe a queuing system. And you write about how it was difficult for you or a new way you found around it that's a lot more efficient. If you do that outside of your work, you never know when somebody might find it inside your work. The example I can give is this. I've always loved working with IoT, and when Alexa and Google Assistant first came out, I was fascinated by it, and so I was like, let me add it. Well, I worked at a company that did a lot of campaigns. It was a marketing company, right? So we would do tech in bursts where perfect was never never the goal. It was let's get it out before the Super Bowl, right? So it's all done. You have 6 weeks, build something, make it work. It was an exciting place to work, but I really wanted to do a little bit more IoT. Well, I didn't really get an opportunity because we weren't doing anything. So I just started making some things on my own that I thought were fun. My particular one was Star Trek themed because I'm a nerd. And I wanted it to pretend like I was talking to the deck, the ship's deck. I wrote about it. And then 6 months later, I get called into my CTO's office who said, hey, I saw this blog you wrote, and this company, it was Walmart, wanted to try out doing voice assistants. And would you be on that team? And I'm like, what? I was talking internally about doing IoT forever, but it wasn't until I demonstrated externally that I got the invitation. Isn't that bizarre? Because that particular blog post had also gotten a lot of attention, and there were comments on it outside of it. So now I was seen as a thought leader, even though I certainly did not invent it at all. I had already pre-qualified because I showed my interest. Having a large and valuable network is a really good asset for advancing your career and your life in general, but it does not mean what you think it means. When programmers ask me about networking, usually it's about this. Hey, Heather, how do I network? The translation is, how do I use people to get what I want? All right? That might be okay if you're just wanting to work with a recruiter, because that's a business relationship. But networking often comes out of friendships. So my personal philosophy is to figure out what you can give to as many people as possible, what they want, or even better, what they need. Because the wrong way to network is usually when you need a new job. It's the absolute worst time to build a network. Building a network takes time. So trying to rush the process and doing it quickly usually results of you reeking of desperation. And nobody really wants that, because nobody can promise you that they can get you a job. Remember, a recruiter is a temporary relationship to further monetary gain for both of you. That is not what I'm talking about. If I ask my friend Beth, do you know of any companies that are hiring? She'll work a little bit harder for me because we already have a rapport, and say, oh, let me ask around for you. They probably actually will ask around for you. If you just put things out into the ether, sometimes you'll get a bite. But usually the best fits for you are from people who already know that you know what you're doing and know what you can do. Referrals are always the best way to get in at any company. So how do you do it the right way, Heather? If it's not when I need a job, what is the right way to network? You know, just like romantic relationships, real business and professional relationships cannot be rushed. Imagine if you met a person that you'd like to pursue a romantic relationship with, and on the first date you ask them to marry you. That is ultimately what many of us, because we are not so good at collectively at communication, so a lot of us are doing. Hey, this is my name. I'm really good in front end. I like doing mobile apps. I like doing cloud stuff. Do you know if you have anybody that could give me a job? And that is the wrong way to introduce. Think about the long game. So think about it as planting a large number of seeds. To say, oh, I'm really interested in these kinds of things. What are you interested in? Learn more about them. Most people scientifically feel like they bond quicker with another human when they're asked about themselves. And the good news is if you're introverted like me, that means you don't have to talk. So you get to let them talk about themselves and then have it slowly work in. Over time, they'll get to find out the way your brain works, which is ultimately the biggest litmus test of anybody putting in a good word for you. The best way to plant and nurture these seeds is to give them first. So always offer to ask around about something, even if they haven't asked you. If you tell me that you're really interested in AI, I immediately think, oh, I have a friend who has a Pluralsight course on AI. I should send that to you and connect you with him. And that's just a gift. Like, they didn't ask me for it. I just gave it. So think about the same for you. You're already checking off this box. You're here in person at DevConf. Congratulations. Networking in person is the most powerful way to build your network. The easiest and best thing you can do is find a bunch of nerds who are just like you and talk about the things you'd like to build in the future. But you can also look at local meetups. It doesn't have to be a large conference. Sometimes these are hard to find or you can't get to them. Don't forget that you need to be online. And I know this sounds like it goes without saying. I'm a millennial, I'm online. But many of us have fallen out of love with the lack of privacy that you have online and have pulled away. While I understand that, it's very difficult to maintain your personal brand if you don't have any online presence. So this is a big one. What does that mean? Do you have to hire a company to come in and do a brand for you? No. What this means is that you have a brand whether you like it or not. Your brand might be disappeared person, but what does that say about you? They'll find old blog posts maybe that you did or your former social media posts, but they need to know what you're doing now. Be your honest self when you are online. That's the best way to build your brand. Now, honest does not mean negative. You don't have to be perfectly happy all the time either. But remember, anything you say online is part of your brand, part of your reputation. So while you can certainly complain about the naming conventions that Microsoft has done lately, that's just silly. At the end of the day, you can have your opinion, but if all you ever express are negative ones, people are not going to want to work with you. Even if you're brilliant, they're not going to want to work with you. So just keep in mind, be your honest self, but take a minute and think, am I bringing anything to the conversation by what I say? Post with purpose. Avoid filler content that doesn't really connect with anybody to your personal brand. So I used to stress out if I didn't share something with my online audience every day. It's like, I don't know. I am somebody who gets writer's block a lot, whether it's in code or maybe something that I'm writing. And I find that I have bursts. Does anybody else have like bursts of creativity and then lulls of it? Yes? Anybody else? Okay, several of you. So in order to get this engagement going, according to the statistical analysis that we are told, is that you need to constantly post. So I would just find random articles and reshare them. But that wasn't me sharing my opinion on them. It was just, here's an article. But that's not helpful to anybody. Those articles exist, but what about the article? Why did you talk about it? Make sure it actually has a purpose when you're posting. Now, before I post anything online, I ask myself, what purpose does this serve? How am I connecting to my audience? And does this contribute to my personal brand? You just ask yourself those questions, and eventually it becomes an algorithm that just runs in the back of your mind. This is a big one. Try and speak like a human. I know it's difficult for us, but try. Don't overthink it. I speak to the audience the same way I would speak to a friend. Informal and upbeat. So you want people to relate to you and what you struggle with. There is a developer on a social media platform called Blue Sky that actually helped build Blue Sky. And when things go wrong, he said, yep, that's me. I shipped that bug. Guess I should go back and look at my tests. And I think it's hilarious the way he shares the journey of what they're trying to do handling a social media platform that's suddenly spiking in users. He's very much developing out in the open, and that has gotten him a lot of trust and respect, because I don't believe there are perfect developers who don't make bugs. This is a hard one. Be moderately responsive. I tend to be very timid, and I don't like to respond or comment, but that's the wrong way to engage in a conversation. If you're not sure what to say, message me and say, hey, here's a thread that is started. I don't know how to respond. What do I say? I will help you. Come message me. There are ways to respond to people criticizing the way you're approaching programming, the way you're approaching your career, and they will always happen. And there are good ways to respond, and there are ways you probably should not. So if you're not sure if the way you're going to be responding is going to help your brand, I'm happy to help. But this is the big one. If you're not online, you're out of sight. You're awesome. We've already established that. But I can't find you. I found that separate from the hiring managers and the recruiters, if I'm going to hire you to be on my team, I will look you up on whatever social medias are out there. I will look at your GitHub if you have one. I will look on YouTube to see if you've done a talk anywhere so I can hear your voice and I can watch your brain move. And that's before I even invite you to come and interview. So make it easy for people. I haven't had to do a big whiteboarding session in years because when they say, oh, what is your history? I just give them a playlist of all of the videos of me giving technical talks. I'm giving human skills talks. This is what I've done. Here is it's already there. Make it easy for people to know that you're already awesome. Don't make it hard. You shouldn't have to hard sell it. Right now, it's an interesting time in the world where you might get a lot of questions from future employers about, well, why should you work here? What makes you a fit? Well, you said yes to me coming in, and I'm assuming you already looked at all of the things I've done, so you must think I'm a fit. What does that look like once we're past this stage? What are you actually building? Can we talk about what you're really building? What's your architectural approach? You can skip right over that because you've already become validated because you put all your stuff online already. If, like me, you have bursts of creativity and then lulls, automate your thoughts. So write them all down. One of the speakers here does this really well, Corey House. He'll write down like a whole spreadsheet of the different kinds of posts he wants to do, and then he'll put them up on an automated system like Hootsuite or Buffer, TweetDeck, stuff like that. And then over time, it will release a new one for him. So all these thoughts are his own, but he's able to just slowly get them out instead of posting all of them on the same day. Got it? That's really helpful for me as well. We're not perfectly on time machines, so automate that communication. I can't believe I have to have this slide, but here it is. Yes, it is true. You should have a good LinkedIn profile. You should have a social media presence. But if you don't have a website where I can just find everything curated down, you're doing yourself a huge disservice. It's more than just your resume. It's your chance to deep dive into different projects you've done. Those are way more interesting. You can put screenshots that you normally wouldn't put on a resume, right? You can put videos on there of things you've done. You can go deeper in your bio of where you came from. You can talk about the things you like to do, the kinds of services you could offer if you are your own consultant now. Please have a website dedicated to your work. It doesn't matter if you built it. I didn't build mine. I used to build mine. I don't bother with it anymore. Now I just use one of the many site generators that are out there because nobody cares if I can do HTML. They just care to know, what is my career? What have I been doing? You must have this because as social media changes, you might find your visibility will also shift. So have one place for people to go. So I wanted to know, were there any overlapping habits of the developers we know that are famous out there, right? That really have a high reputation? The good news is that becoming a super employee or a super well-known person is not a rarefied secret. It's a combination of skill set and mindset, and you can begin developing that for yourself. So these are some habits that I've noticed of well-known developers. They pay attention to what others value. They're often studying the preferences and the goals of their direct supervisors, their supervisors, and the company at large. So they're doing things above and beyond what other employees are doing only because they're just showing interest. They're motivated in showing that they want to learn what it's like to be at the top and have that responsibility. So the result of paying attention at those levels above you is being able to discern what needs to be done and take action on it and by prioritizing it first without even having to be asked. Because if you know what the mission is of your company or the mission is of your project, you can start making decisions that will automatically prioritize results that they will value. Make sense? I never had to do that before. I just wanted somebody to give me a JIRA ticket and I can go run after it and build it. But I need to start asking why. Why are we building this? Not because I'm challenging it, but because I truly want to understand the purpose behind this. That means I might make a different decision as a developer if it will take less time, if the real priority is just time to market, just trying to get it out. If the priority, though, is it's very crucial that the quality is really high and that we don't care about the deadline, that I will prioritize looking at what kind of tooling can make my code more clean or can deliver it a lot safer in a team. Another thing that these super employees, these well-known developers do is that they choose the right place for their talents. This is an interesting one because sometimes the economy will ebb and flow. Sometimes we're super in demand, other times we won't be as in demand. But you are all in the top 5%, so you'll always be there. It's hard to be a super employee if the company's needs and values are different from yours. And there is a research report by the Cicero Group in 2015 that found one of the most important factors in employees consistently producing great work was recognition. And if the company values different things than the skill set that you provide, that's obviously not a good match. It's great that they offered you a job, it's great that you work there, but maybe long term you're not going to get the recognition because they don't value your talents the way that you do. So choosing where you work is very important. Well-known developers also focus on the big picture. If they don't understand something, they get the information they need to make its importance clearer. I have never met a CEO, CTO, manager of engineering that wouldn't love to answer the questions, oh, why are we doing this? And what is the bigger goal of this? They love getting 10 minutes to explain their vision to you. So make sure you do it. In addition, well-known developers are able to prioritize so their activities are focused where they are of most value. They are comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I felt like this was not me. So I'm a very cozy person. I like feeling safe. And I really want everything to feel all right all the time. But the data is clear. You have to be working on things that are difficult for you or you will not grow. Famously, I have said, if it scares me, I have to run towards it. That means I just don't feel like I know enough about this aspect of tech, or I don't know enough about what it's like to be a leader. That means it's a sign that I should deep dive on it and decide. Just because it looks scary from the outside doesn't mean it is once you dive in. Remember, you can do the same job for a year, for 10 years. Do you have 10 years experience, or do you have 1 year of experience 10 times over? If the job you're at doesn't have the opportunities for you to grow and do things that are different, remember you have the external thought leadership route. You can do things with your local meetups. You can do things on your own that will also demonstrate the way you are stretching. I deliberated putting this in, but when I interviewed several of these well-known developers, they all said the same thing. They like their colleagues. That's great for those people who are just charismatic, and some of us are just shy. And not everybody likes us because we don't speak out as much. But high performers are in tune with the people around them, and they can sense when they need something. So that means they also possess soft skills like empathy, and they're able to relate to other people. And if you can't do that yet, I promise you it is a skill you can learn. They relate to people because they take the time and make the effort to get to know individuals one-on-one, all of them. Even if they disagree with the way they communicate or what they're doing. A high performer will put the human first and seek that connection, and only then can there be trust. This is one of my favorite quotes. Every person needs to be seen, understood, and validated, or appreciated. You can dismiss somebody who disagrees with you, or you can try to figure out why they say what they say and do what they do. Remember, they pay attention to what others value. These developers are studying the preferences and goals of their direct supervisors and their colleagues. So how do you become a trusted voice then? Are you just supposed to schmooze everyone? No. I'm not asking you to do that. You don't have to be everyone's friend, but you do have to understand how they work. Otherwise, how are you going to be able to communicate with them? It's more than just, do you have any hobbies? Ask them what made them go into programming in the first place. That's my favorite question. I started because I wanted to be a wizard that made something from nothing, so here I am in coding. That's what I chose. I like that because that disarms people, because that puts us on the same playing field. Even if you have more experience than me, or I do than you, we all can usually start off on a nice neutral base of why we started programming. You can positively and never negatively engage with your peers outside of your small group, extended in your company, because that will also increase your visibility. People outside of just your team will know that you're a developer and the things you do and your philosophies. That is really crucial to being selected in a random meeting of managers saying, oh, we're going to do this one-off project. Who would you like to work on that? You want to be the first person that comes to mind, or at least the first couple. And that's why it's important for you to build your brand and your voice within the company you work for and also outside. Just engage, be positive, and respectful. But schmoozing is a turnoff. I don't really like it. I read a book by Kim Scott called Radical Candor that demonstrates the right way to encourage and engage and have that trusted voice. This is what this quadrant looks like from her book. Has anybody seen this before? Yay! Several of you. Awesome. I like this one. Ruinous empathy. What does this mean? The best example I can give you is when you over-encourage a junior who has never done something before to try it as if they're already amazing and they are not going to struggle. They're going to struggle. And maybe the code that they deliver won't be up to the standards of the team. And instead of instructing them about that, you just say, it doesn't matter, just ship it, it'll be great. And then it actually slows the whole team down and makes them feel kind of worried about whether or not they're providing value, and it doesn't help. Manipulative insincerity. The good example of this one is when somebody is your manager, your leader, and they call you in and they just ask you to sign something just to document this thing that happened, but it's no big deal. So, I mean, your job is totally fine, but we just need to know document what happened. That's manipulative insincerity. That's leading you on. There's an obnoxious aggression. The only thing I can think of immediately is Stack Overflow. It doesn't help for you to tell people how stupid they are because they don't understand polling or how F# was made. But yet, here we are in 2023, and it happens all the time. So what is radical candor then? How do we get away from those other squares and end up on this one? You have to have a baseline of trust and make sure that the feedback that you're giving is actually valuable from somebody who actually cares. This doesn't mean it's your manager, by the way. This is most likely probably a peer on your team who maybe has a little bit more experience or has just been at the company for a while. And if you've spent some time with them and learned who they are as a person and how they like to work, and you've gotten positive feedback from them in the past, them being able to come to you and say, hey, I think I really appreciate what you've put out there for your pull requests, but this particular thing seems like it's really confusing and I don't really get it. I think there's some room for improvements for your test. Sound better coming from somebody who has actually spent time getting to know you than your manager saying, hey, your code isn't up to snuff. They haven't really earned the right to give that to you because they never talk to you unless there's a problem. Don't do that to the other devs. What if you are the senior talking to the other devs? And the only time you really talk to them is when they're doing something wrong. That doesn't work. Radical candor means because we both agree on something, we have something in common, you have to find that commonality. You respect each other and you want each other to be better, so you give feedback. That means you have to take it. Yes. If you give feedback, you have to be willing to be told, hey, the way you gave that feedback was not great. Or, I would be able to do this, but you never actually told me how to do that. So I can't give you what you need. That only happens when you respect each other, when you have that trust. If you do this for them, you have to be willing to encourage them to do this for you. You have to truly open connection with others for this to work, because only 7% of the words you say counts for communication. Vocal tone is 38%, and body language is 55%. What happens if you are a remote employee then, and you don't get to have body language? That really cuts down a lot. That means you kind of have to over-communicate what you're doing in order to still be remembered that you're over here. I put together something that I will call the force multiplier loop. Once you learn why somebody is behaving the way they are, you can generate empathy. If they feel heard and they belong, you've met them on their terms, and that fosters a feeling of safety. With safety comes trust. And with trust comes the ability to have radical candor. And when you have that, the communication is far more effective. With open communication becomes improved social ability on your part. And when you have that, you can form better communicational habits. And when you have better habits, you progressively become better and better at understanding empathy. That's your connection force multiplier loop trademark. People will forget what you said, forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. They won't remember much except for that one project 5 years ago you did and how much you helped them with this. Maybe you stayed up late with them, or maybe you just helped them along when they couldn't find a bug in their code. Or maybe you were the one person who said, hey, don't listen to them. Learning means it's a series of failures on the way to success. Don't worry about it. That one phrase that you said, they'll remember the rest of their lives. I have phrases that I have said, I forgot I said. And then many years later, someone will come up to me saying, oh, you said this to me at the end of a talk, and I've never forgotten it. It also goes both ways. If you tear someone down, they will always remember that. And if you need a job in a few years and you want to work where they work, they're not going to put in that good word for you. The whole reason we're talking about these soft skills is because being memorable and visible matters how you come across. All of us can code, not all of us can communicate. Work on that one. To become visible, you have to show others that you see them first, because listening is the most important thing you can do to change your career. You might not always like your colleagues. I have definitely been there. But learning how to work with difficult people is essential for moving up anywhere. Doesn't matter which job it is. So work on your team building skills and take advantage of opportunities to lead even small little things when you can. Share what you've done often and utilize the social media outlets to provide reach outside of your company. Sometimes it takes being externally recognized to get that chance. And you need to inspire by example, because passion is contagious. Be that without expecting anything in return. Don't just be the example of what good work looks like. Let it radiate from you with the attitude that you can do it. Maybe you haven't learned how yet, but you can totally do it. Everybody wants to work with someone like that. Reach out first to share with excitement and invite others to your table. And your rise will be very natural if you follow this. Give people a good reason not to forget you. Or, I guess you could put it this way, be so good they can't ignore you. My reason would be, know that you're good enough anyway. And you're collaborative. And somebody who is fun in the tech space, who has a vision to be part of it. And you want to be the first one in their minds when they've got a new project. Be a vibrant, colorful part of this monochromatic world. You can be a natural part of the scene, but stand out at the same time. Please, don't hide. Thank you.